Welcome back, everybody. As I said before in previous videos, I am going to try to get caught up on some of the outstanding videos I have, some of the film work I have. So this is going to be one of them. This is the air show and review video for the Aero Gatineau Ottawa 2019 Red Arrows show. This goes back to August 13th, I believe. August 13th of 2019. There's the promo ticket that they provided to the public to advertise for the event. So in 2019, the Red Arrows took on an 11-week tour of North America, both Canada and the United States, mostly to kind of reinforce England's trading partners, so to say. With Brexit going on, with them crashing out of the EU at the end of January of 2020, the end of this month, if all goes well, at the end of this month they leave. With the exiting of that, they wanted to reinforce their trading partners with the United States and Canada, which are their largest non-EU trading partners. I think the largest trading partners in general, to be honest. I don't know the details. But anyways, the point was, they were leaving the EU. They sent the Red Arrows over to North America, did a tour, not just air shows. They also did a number of just city location flybys, as well as just general relationship building. A lot of black tie events where the pilots and the different, British parliamentary and government representatives were able to schmooze and shake hands and press skin with the counterparts in Canada and the United States, just to reinforce those trading the trade. There's a word I'm thinking of and I can't think of it right now. The trade that between the different countries over the past hundreds of years it's existed. So it was more of a trade mission than it was an airshow tour. But as an airshow attender, I was very happy that they were coming over. I had planned before I even they announced the tour before an official schedule was released. It usually gets released to ICAS in December. So December of 2019 they released the schedule for 2020 and December of 2019 they released the 2020 schedule. So December of 18 they released the 2019 schedule. But before that they had announced that they would be doing a North American tour. So I had already planned and basically told my wife, look, I am traveling to see the Red Arrows at some point. Whether that's 3, 4, 5, 10 hours, I want to see the Red Arrows, so I will be traveling to see this group. So luckily, once the official schedule was announced, an Ottawa show was announced. So it was actually held at the Gatineau Airport. It was hosted by Vintage Wings of Canada, and it was actually the very first public show that they held in North America. So they officially arrived in Halifax, and they had a private air show held there to get Transport Canada and FAA approval to do the North American shows. They're not normally approved by those departments because they are a European-based team. So they had to get official Transport Canada and FAA sign-off saying, yes, you're safe, your routine meets our criteria for air shows, you are safe to perform these shows. So they had to do that. So it was a private show in Halifax to get the official sign-off. Once that sign-off was given, their very next stop was Gatineau. It was a Tuesday. It was the only day that was available in the schedule because all the weekends had already been taken. And so we didn't have an actual event. So like I said, this wasn't an air show tour. This was a trade show tour. So they knew they wanted to hit specific cities and they wanted to hit specific key shows. The Toronto Air Show was one they wanted to hit. So there's all these key air shows that had set dates that they knew they had to attend. So the High Commission in Canada, in Ottawa, the ambassador and the High Commission here in Ottawa, the nation's capital, basically said, do a show in Ottawa, whatever day you can be here, fit it in, and we'll make it work. So Tuesday, August 13th was the day that was available, and then the Vintage Wings, the Aero Gatineau Ottawa air show team, people who put on the wonderful air shows over at the Gatineau Airport, hosted by Vintage Wings of Canada, they built an air show around the Red Arrows visit. Again, being a Tuesday, it made a lot of people mad because it was like 3:30 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. So not everybody could make it. Not everybody could have, the time off work. It was before school started, so most of the kids were out of school, but it was, the parents trying to get the time off work to be there. So luckily I was able to get the day off, and I went out to take in the show. It was an amazing show. The weather was beautiful. Vintage Wings and the Aero Gatineau team went all out and brought in quite a few aircraft to really round out the show. I had planned to have 3 Spitfires there. Their own Spitfire, the Collings Foundation Spitfire, which you'll see in a little bit with some of the pictures and videos I took, as well as the Silver Spitfire. And I'm just going to go into a quick aside here because I'm going to tie it into this video. The Silver Spitfire was a project out of England to restore and fly a Spitfire around the world. So they headed west from England around the world and back to England. And they did it. It took quite a bit longer than they expected, but they did it. They I don't know the exact date, but they very recently, within the past few weeks, landed back at their home airport in England. So they actually did finish and complete a round-the-world Spitfire flight in an 80-year-old aircraft, which is outstanding that they could do that. But the aircraft was basically polished aluminum with a sort of where the roundel would have been was their sort of logo, their round-the-world logo, and a civilian British registration. So here's, I'll post the pictures here in a sec of the plane. They were supposed to have been there for the air show. Unfortunately, the weather just didn't cooperate over the North Atlantic. They got stuck in Scotland for a few days. They got stuck in Iceland for a few days, and they just couldn't make it down. I believe it was like the weekend after the show. They ended up landing in Gatineau. So I actually drove out that day I was here, and I had to go see it. I mean, it's not very often you get to see a Spitfire flying around the world. So I went out and made sure I saw that event. And so as I said, here now, I'll post the pictures I took of the airframe in the hangar, in the Vintage Museum Canada hangar. So it would have been amazing to have all 3 aircraft at the show. It just didn't work out time-wise. So at least we had the 2 at the show, and I still got to see the Silver Spitfire. So it was a pretty interesting event to have that happen as well. It just didn't quite coincide with the Red Arrows. So anyways, preamble aside, that was a pretty long intro to this video. We are going to get into the videos, get into the pictures, and I'll more or less chronologically go through this air show as I recorded it, and let's see it. So here we go, the 2019 Aero Gatineau Red Arrows show in review. And as always, my name is Sean, and this is Sean's Aviation. Okay, so here we go into the meat of this video. Right off the top, I'm going to apologize for the somewhat crappy quality of some of the videos. In fact, all of the videos. I apparently never checked my lens before I went to this event, and there was quite a bit of dirt on the lens. So the videos have a bit of, as I said, a bit of dirt in it. I apologize. Hopefully, you guys can still enjoy it without having to deal with that. So it all started, I guess, so it was a Tuesday afternoon. They arrived early in the morning, and then they were doing the show, a flyby of downtown, and then the afternoon show, and then they had a special VIP dinner at night. So my plan had been to spend the day out at Gatineau seeing the whole thing, but unfortunately, as is the case, I couldn't really leave my wife alone all day with the kids. So I stayed home for the morning, took care, helped them, had somebody come over to help them in the afternoon. And I headed out probably around, I want to say around 1-ish, I headed out to head over to Gatineau. So I got there just after 2. Let me just double check my times here, make sure I'm telling the truth. So yeah, no, I guess I got there earlier than that, about 10 a.m. So yeah, I dropped my daughter off at daycare, and then I headed over. So I got there around 10 a.m. Just as yeah, it makes sense, a 3:30 show for the afternoon. They were 10 o'clock in the morning when they did the flybys. So as I said, I got there around 10. I parked the car. As I was parking the car, I heard them taking off. I heard the jets. I heard them going. Just unfortunately, the way the parking was set up, I couldn't actually see any of the takeoff. I missed the takeoff portion for the flyby of downtown Ottawa, and obviously I couldn't see the downtown flight as I was out at the Gatineau for that show. But I got there, I got set up, and they had gone north and did the prep work to get formed up and whatnot. So just after I got there, they flew overhead of the airport, so I got a good shot of them going towards downtown. That was my first view of the Red Arrows, which was, you know, it wasn't the best, but it was still kind of cool to see the Red Arrows go by. That was my intro to it. So here's a picture of them, put a couple of them up here as they came towards the airfield, and then past us in the distance on the south as they headed towards downtown. And as I said, I wasn't downtown myself, but I did, well, I mean, they're all over the internet. So here's the official Red Arrows picture of the flyby of downtown Ottawa. I do know a photographer who was there, and pictures, I was very impressed with the way the flyby happened, and his pictures turned out quite nice. But as I said, there's the picture of the flyby of downtown Ottawa. So then they returned, and they did an overhead break. So normally when they finish their show, which you'll see in some videos later on, they finish in like a downward burst, and from that downward burst they form up to land. So you don't normally see just an arrival. Most of the videos you see online are of the actual performance, not just of an arrival. So I'll throw up the pictures here. It's pretty cool when they actually come in as a formation like this and go to land. They actually break off on either direction. So you can see here with this picture, one jet's going right, one jet's going left. And as you continue through the sequence, you can see how progressively more and more of the planes break off and go into land right down to the last. There's the last two with team lead, and then team lead himself does the break and goes into land. So they go off in either direction. So instead of all the planes flying one downwind and then landing, they both fly in like a zipper style. So they have right and left hand downwinds, and then they zipper in one left, one right, one left, one right, and they line up to land on the runway that way. So it's pretty cool. And then I got some really good shots of the landing sequence. I'll throw a couple of different sequences up here of the planes as they went by on the ground. Beautiful light, beautiful sun. You can see the colors really pop on the aircraft. So I got some great profile pictures of every aircraft as it came into land. Again, it's a very a nice performance. A lot of, especially in Europe, in a lot of cases, the aircraft don't base out of the airport that the air show is held at. They fly in, they do a performance, and then they leave. So you don't actually see them. Not always do you see them up close and personal like this. So it's a bit of a nice chance to get some of them. And then so after that, the two Spitfires had been up in the air. They had been off doing some formation practice work before the afternoon show. So they came in and did an overhead break for the landing. So I got a couple of good shots here. I'll post one or two good shots here of the formation as it went by, nice and close. That's Michael Potter in Y2K up front, the vintage wings, Mark 9 Spitfire, and then in the back is Rob Collings of the Collings Foundation, flying their Mark 9 Spitfire, and I'll get some pictures later on of their Spitfire. It's a pretty interesting Spitfire. And then of course there's this beautiful shot I have as Mike rolls out on the runway and Rob Collings goes overhead. I mean, you can even see Mike, you can see his helmet there looking up as he's watching Mike Collings go overhead. So Rob Collings go overhead. So it must have been a pretty cool experience for Mike to see that go by. Sorry to be sipping my coffee as I do this video. So yeah, it was pretty cool to see them come in. And then I cranked the shutter speeds down just to get some good shots. So you get some good close-ups. There's a good shot of Mike going by in the vintage wing Spitfire. I like having the blurred background. You can see him going by. And then next up was Rob Collings going by. So again, at least he wasn't looking at me in that picture, but you still see him going by. So it's pretty cool to see them landing. First time in many years. I think the last time I've seen two Spitfires flying together would have been 2013 in Hamilton with the big formation with the Mosquito and the Lancaster. But never really seen the two Spitfires flying formation like that, so that was a pretty cool event to see that. Then we had some arrivals coming in. I'm not going to show you the general aviation arrivals. I'll focus more on the aircraft that were taking part in the show itself. scheduled static. So here we go is the Green Harvard, the Green Monster. That's Olivier Lacombe, based out of somewhere in Quebec. I don't know the exact airport name, but a good friend of mine used to fly King Airs. He now flies for Jazz, but that's his family's Harvard that he flies. It's painted up to represent a Typhoon, Hawker Typhoon from World War II. So that's him coming in. And then we've got Olivia, the Viking aircraft Turbo Beaver. It was restored and brought up to their sort of most modern standard of what they can do with the Turbo Beaver. So that's sort of their company demonstrator, showing off what the plane can do. So it's always nice to see that show up. Piece of Canadian aviation history. And then a very rare bird. There's only 90 of these built, from what I would understand, and this is only the second one I've ever seen. So this is a Pitts Model 12. So it's a radial engined redesign, effectively, of the Pitts, with some minor, more than minor, some significant changes to the airframe to make it work. So this is a local, somewhere outside of Montreal, I believe. He's part of the Yak Attack team with the Yak 52s, and he recently purchased this. So he wasn't part of the show per se, but he was on site, and he took off, and then he went off into the north, out into the practice area, and did some working up, getting himself used to the airframe, and prepping to do some future air shows. So after that, the show started. So according to my picture timestamps, the show started right around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I started with the Yellow Wings, so the Vintage Wings of Canada, Finch, and the Harvard went up. So I'll throw up a couple of pictures of the Finch here. It's a Fleet Finch, basic trainer, built by Fleet Aircraft in Montreal, and then the North American Harvard. Well, this particular one is a Canada Car and Foundry Mark IV, but it's painted up to represent an actual Harvard, flown out of CFB Uplands, or Royal Canadian Air Force Station Uplands, as it would have been called at the time, during World War II, and it was one of the aircraft flown by John Gillespie McGee, who wrote the Poem High Flight. So this is the Vintage Wings Harvard, painted up to represent a Harvard Mark II that was flown by him while he did his training here in Ottawa. As I said, the sun was beautiful, perfect sky, perfect light, so, you know, beautiful weather to see a Harvard do some flybys.
Well, most were retired by October 1944. Their role as a primary trainer was taken over by the Fairchild PT-26
He should be a keen sportsman, possessed of energy and stamina. Should be a popular...
And then moving right along after that, we had the incredible Dr. Rick Volker. He went up in his Sukhoi 26, I want to say. I apologize if that's wrong. Sukhoi 26, there we go. Look at the picture. It says it right there. Sukhoi 26. So it's this pink Sukhoi 26. So that's he's a dentist by trade, Monday to Friday, and then he does this on the side, keeps himself busy flying aerobatics in this souped-up Sukhoi. So he's a pretty regular in Gatineau. I've seen him many years. So he came up and did a show. So I've got a quick video here of from taxiing out and doing some of his flying. So we'll take a quick look at some of that video.
soviétique Sukhoi 28 un des appareils qui a été créé to Cargo oil line. Fleetwood Banks is a next stop in the bar. Butler Parachutes provides Richard Westwood reliable and Drake avionics. He loves Drake. Drake is in perfect communication with control towers, gives him the way to be tracked on GPS. Clarity is very important to his flight. And Drake est une compagnie britannique. Drake, yes it is. And he loves the product. Trig Avionics, keep it Rick flying as he gets into his final few maneuvers now, and he's getting tired up there. Pulling these G's on the weekends, pulling teeth during the week. Rick is a dentist in the Niagara Falls, New York area. So outside now he goes. Outside. The force of gravity trying to push him up and out of the cockpit as he tumbles the airplane in the opposite direction this time.
So as I said, I'm sorry for the poor quality of that video. I wish I had checked the camera before I started filming. That's something I need to get used to doing in the future. So anyways, he does put on quite an amazing show, as I'm sure you saw with that last that last clip, he does quite a bit of tumbling, and you know, he puts that plane right to the edge. And then of course here's a beautiful picture of his photo pass that he ends his show with. You can really get a good view of the shape of this aircraft, the plan form of the airframe. So yeah, that's Mr. Rick Volker. Always a pleasure to see him do a show. And yeah, so then next up we had the Spitfires go up for their show. As I said in the preamble to this, there were supposed to have been 3. Would have been amazing, you know, but 2 is better than 1. So they went up, and then I've got a quick video here of the planes getting ready to do their engine, or taxiing out, doing their engine run-ups. So we'll see that video of the Spitfires doing their engine run-ups, and then we'll come back to some more pictures.
But couldn't be with us today, but instead, of course, we have the 2 from the museum as Mike Potter taxis out first in the Mark 9, and the Collins Foundation following. And then if you look further back as Rick Volker gets ready to shut down, you also see the Red Arrows pilots heading out to the aircraft. They're getting ready to go in a few minutes as well. But first, of course, ladies and gentlemen, the Spitfire. Please. Là maintenant, c'est le temps des Britanniques. Si vous voyez les Blues sont pressés devant les appareils, celui-là même de la collection Mike Potter aux commandes de son appareil Spitfire, Mark 9, et derrière lui, un appareil de la Fondation Rudders aux commandes.
So there we are. So that was them getting ready to take off, and then the actual takeoff itself. Beautiful sound of the Merlin. You can never go wrong with the sound of a Merlin. After that, they did a couple of passes. They weren't quite as close as they were earlier on in the day, but with the perfect light and the sun, made some beautiful passes. So I got a couple of topside passes here. We'll go through some of those, and you can see, I mean, there's nothing more beautiful than the shape of a Spitfire. So here you got a beautiful topside pass of the Y2K. It's almost a banana pass, really showing the top, the shape of the wing and everything. And then the Collins Foundation Mark 9 going by. It's a little hard to see the difference in the aircraft, unless you really know what you're looking for. But first and foremost, you'll notice that the rudders are different. The Y2K Vintage Wings Mark 9 has a pointed rudder, where the Collins Foundation has a rounded rudder. Outside of that, you'll notice the elevators are slightly different. If you look at some of those plan form pictures, you'll see the tips of the elevators are slightly different between the two, and the wing bulges, the bilges of the cannons, are slightly different. The rear view mirrors above the canopies are slightly different, and the exhaust stacks are slightly different. The Mark 9, the Vintage Wings Mark 9 has the fishtail, and the Collins Foundation Mark 9 has the rounded ones. So those are just some of the minor differences. And then the reason why there's those differences. The Vintage Wings Spitfire, while I'm doing this, we're just going to cycle through some of these beautiful Spitfire pictures. There's a beautiful one I have of the Collins Foundation doing a bottom side pass. Don't see a lot of bottom side passes. I'm rambling now because I just love looking through these pictures. Anyways, the Vintage Wings Spitfire was actually one of the last of the production Mark 9 Spitfires. So it has all of the later additions to it. As I said, the later rudder the Mark 9 actually had a different elevator layout to decrease the control forces on the rudder. So a lot of on the elevators, I should say. So all of those additions are on the aircraft. The Collins Foundation Mark 9 is one of the first built. I believe it's number 6 of the Mark 9s built. And the first Mark 9s, including this particular airframe, were Mark 5s that were rebuilt. So they took a Mark 5, removed the engine. They put the later, more powerful Mark 9 motor, the later version of the Merlin, sorry, the later, more powerful Merlin that was on the Mark 9 was put onto the Mark 5, as well as all the other minor upgrades you needed, the longer cowlings and everything else. So the actual first, I believe the first 100 Mark 9 Spitfires were rebuilt Mark 5s, and this is one of the original. So it's got a lot of the Mark 5, early Mark 5 features, but it's a Mark 9. So it's pretty cool to have the two, sort of one of the earliest and one of the latest. So when you see them side by side, you get a real good feel for the differences in the two aircraft. And as I said, it wasn't a very big air show. So right after the Spitfires flew, the next part of the show was the Red Arrows, sort of what everybody was here to see. So they, and just while I'm at it here, again, I've got 2 more quick pictures that I love of the Spitfires coming in, taxiing in. Again, I cranked the shutter speed down so you get a bit of a blurred background with the crisp view of the pilot. So there's both the picture here of Michael Potter going by in the Y2K and of Rob Collins going by in the Collins Foundation Mark 9. So beautiful views of them going by. And then after they landed, the Red Arrow started up and they did their show. So again, I apologize for the quality of the video. I do have some of the video of the Red Arrows starting up and taxiing out. So we'll put that on now. We'll watch that and we'll come back and look at some more of these pictures, and I will go through some of the maneuvers they do.
Regardez-les au passage, les tout petits, mesdames et messieurs, les pilotes Red Arrows, avec le militaire qui a enfoncé le drapeau du Canada il y a quelques secondes.
So as you can see, the startup and takeoff, the takeoff was really weird. So you saw how the first one went off. I didn't film very much. You saw how the first one, smoke went on. Apparently they do that at some of the smaller shows to, I gotta remember how I heard the reasoning I heard. It's to show where the takeoff point needs to be or something, because it's a shorter runway, and anyways, there's a reason why they do it. It just, it sucks. It ruins the photography. It ruins the shots. You know, it's yeah. Anyways, it is what it is. So that's the beginning of the Red Arrow takeoff. The booklet they gave out actually showed all the different formations that they fly, so you knew what to expect while you're taking photography and whatnot, because some of the maneuvers I wanted to do video, some of the maneuvers I wanted to do stills photography. So it was nice to know what they were doing. It allowed me to plan ahead of what I wanted to film, because I only had one shot at this. It was the only chance I had to see the Red Arrows in a while. I didn't want to miss anything. So it's kind of nice to have that. So we'll go through some of the pictures. So, you know, the first court formation that I got shots of here, the big diamond. I mean, most formation teams do the big diamond, but it's still interesting with the 9-ship. Not a lot of 9 ships out there. The second one they did was the Concorde. So I mean, you can tell it kind of looks like the Concorde as it flies by. So they did that formation, which is always nice. Sorry, no, the first one was the... I have to double check my books. I'll be right back. I'm going to get the book and we'll go through it. Okay, so the first formation that you see here, I'll put it back up. This first formation you see here is called the Apollo. So it actually kind of looks like the lunar lander is what they're trying to represent. It was the anniversary of the Apollo landings in 2019. So they were honoring that with that formation. And then the second formation that went by is the Concorde Formation. So you'll see here from a distance, you can almost see the shape of the Concorde with the 2 engine pods, the 2 lower red arrows below the formation representing those engine housings that hung underneath the wings of a Concorde. So they went into a roll, and in the middle of the roll switched formations, and they come out in Signet formation, which is this formation here. And then from that, they transition to Phoenix. So that right there is the Phoenix formation, which, I mean, in all honesty, from a distance looks like a bird. So I mean, it does come across. This was also the first time they used the colored smoke, which was nice. There's a good shot of them making the turn with the colored smoke. So after that, they transitioned to what they call Lancaster, which is evocative of the World War II bomber. So there you can kind of see the shape of the wings with the tail and whatnot. So yeah, you kind of see a Lancaster in there. It's hard to do when you look at the planes, but you know, it is what it is. So from that, they went on to Tornado. And I did try to get some footage. I think I have video here. So we will... here's a shot of them coming at you. So the idea with Tornado is there's the 7 of them in the middle, and then 2 rolled around the formation with red and blue smoke. So you can clearly see them going around the formation, the red and blue smoke. And then, as I said, hopefully we'll go to some video and you can see some video of that.
This is Tornado.
Okay, and then next up they do what's called the palm split. So here you can see them coming directly at the formation, and then the whole formation pulls up. You see there's 2 guys that sit a little lower down underneath everybody. So the first 7 pull up and do like a palm leaf type spread in the vertical, while the 2 lower ones switch to colored smoke and do a crossover in front of the crowd. They split off into the 7-ship team and the 2 solos. So you start to get some of the opposing solo work. I was a little disappointed. They don't fly nearly as close as the American teams or the North American teams. The Snowbirds, the Blue Angels, the Red Arrows. When they, the Thunderbirds, the Blue Angels, and the Snowbirds. When they do opposing passes, they do opposing passes almost in line. So they come and they pass in eyesight of the crowd. Whereas I found the Red Arrows tended to be offset So you didn't get the same dramatic shots that you would have with some of the North American teams. But this is really the best I managed to get of any of the opposing solos doing a pass. So I mean, not the greatest, but it is what it is. So they did a couple of other maneuvers with the solos. So I mean, it wasn't really the best. So you know, I'm only going to show a couple of different video shots in here of some of them going by with the smoke, because it's hard to capture what they're doing with a stills camera. I'll interject with a couple of videos here and there. I can't remember what videos I have while I'm doing this now, so I'll go back and forth and add the video where I have it appropriately to show you what they're doing. So they do a couple of different maneuvers. And then here's the, there's an overhead vertical brake. There's a carousel, so there's the overhead, a shot of them about to do the overhead brake. There's another opposing solo pass, a couple of better ones. This is the carousel, so they do an opposing pass, circle around, cross on the backside, come around, cross at the front side. So I got a couple of decent crossover shots while they were doing that. But, you know, like I said, it is what it is. You can't get everything. So there's a few other, you know, passes here, again, with colored smoke and whatnot. Really makes for some interesting pictures. You've also got what they call a corkscrew, where you've got two aircraft flying level and the other two revolving around, similar to Tornado, just a few less aircraft involved. Rollbacks, it was an interesting formation. I've never seen anything like that before. So the team comes in and two aircraft split off, roll around, come up from behind, and just as they come up from behind, the next two split off and roll, and they just keep doing that as they go down the show line. So it makes for some colored, you know, some nice sort of candy cane stripes in the sky, but not really that dynamic, I want to say. It was just a lot of colored smoke. You can definitely tell where the North American teams who only use one color smoke do a lot of more dynamic stuff, showing the aircraft sort of flying close or passing close and trying to show that, whereas with the colored smoke, they're more painting a picture in the sky, so the maneuvers aren't quite as dramatic, but it leaves a great visual representation of what you expect to see. The next one is the 6-9 brake, which is probably my favorite. So you can see here the whole team kind of flies at you. Well, there's 4 aircraft, that 6, 7, 8, and 9, they come at you. And then the 2 aircraft break off and do a roll. And then just as they come back up through the middle of the formation, I have a close-up here, and you can see how the whole team starts to break into each other, and you get this wonderful cross of all 4 aircraft. And with the colored smoke, it's just amazing. It looks dramatic in person. It looks dramatic in real life, in photos. So it's really, really well done. And then the final, the Vixen break, they come in and they break overhead into a giant star. And then from that, they've basically rolled into the landing sequence. So that was the show. I do have quite a few pictures of them on the ground, but I mean, they're not much different than what you would see when they were taxiing down on the runway from I showed earlier as they landed. So, I mean, you've seen one Red Arrow. I mean, I collect the registration, so I want a picture of everyone. But for the purposes of this video, you've seen one, you've seen them all. I threw up a couple of pictures before. I'm not necessarily going to go through all of them again. But you can clearly see kind of, you know, how things looked in the show. So that, in a nutshell, was the show. Not a whole lot happened. Like I said, it was a much smaller show than usual, but still, it was a great show. I'm so happy the Red Arrows were there. It literally could have just been the Red Arrows flying, and it would have been a good show.
Leading the formation over in big battle, the red, white and blue smoke painting the Union flag over Gatineau. As the aircraft pull up, Red One calling them into short diamond. Over the
I'm going to finish off. I got a couple more stills here of some of the arrival aircraft. So you got things like a Pit Special, and there's a couple of there's a Nanchang and a couple of Globe Swifts coming in. So I'll put some of those up just so you can kind of see them as I do my close-off rambling here. So in conclusion, as I said, smaller show, not nearly as big as some of the other shows, but with the Red Arrows, it literally could have just been the Red Arrows doing a show. I mean, the Red Arrows could have just took off and flew by level and left, and I would have been happy just to say I saw the Red Arrows. So everything else that they built up around the Red Arrows doing their show was 110% worth it. It was a beautiful day. It was good weather. I mean, they put on a good show. I cannot complain in the slightest. And there you have it, folks. My review of the Aero Gatineau Ottawa Red Arrows show of August 13th, 2019. So as I said, I do apologize for the horrible video quality. I was using my older camera with a lens that I had not cleaned before the show. And again, as with most of my airshow photography, my focus is my stills. I take the video kind of in and around when I can. I'm going to try to get better at interspersing video and stills. I'm even looking at possibly setting up a camera like a GoPro or something along those lines on the hot foot of my camera so that it's almost always going to be taking video. I can turn it on and off at will and just take shots and video of stuff even when I'm shooting still. So that's something I want to look at in the future, possibly for this year's airshow season. We'll see how things turn out. But on that note, thank you for watching. Comments, questions, criticisms, I don't care what you want to say it down below in the comment section. If you have pictures and video of the Gatineau Ottawa show that you want to post yourself or mention, by all means, share away. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned. Hopefully you'll see more of the content you like coming in the future. Keep watching.
Thank you for watching, guys, and as always, if you are interested in any of the content you see, you can access my website at www.seans-aviation.com. You can see all the latest pictures of aircraft and museums and the build logs of all of my current models and past models on that site. And if you're interested in any of this content, please click the subscribe button here on YouTube to follow more. Thank you very much, and see you guys next time.